Botlab is a technology firm that has training packages for different audiences in cybersecurity and data science. We also offer data science as a service. This evening, we'll be talking about systems audits, how to make them more effective.
Sorry for the hitch. It always sometimes happens. Things usually happen when you least expect them to happen. Maybe we should have discussed prior some business continuity mitigation measures at this level. But nevertheless, we proceed. So as Mercy had introduced, I'm going to discuss with you today effective information systems audit. My name is Bonface, as highlighted on the screen. Now, why information systems audit? Information systems audit is becoming a strategic function to organization. And long time has gone or before when systems audit was considered as something just as a back-end function that is a supporting role to the organization. Currently, specific transformative decisions have to be made by business to elevate the function of information systems audit and not just to be marooned under the financial audit in organization, because the world is really moving past the digital transformation era, because businesses currently are being data-centric, are being moved by data, and businesses are definitely asking what next past the post-digital era. Long time has passed. We no longer currently talk about things like social media, IoT, and all that as the buzzwords. Those were, as to say, cliche words for the digital transformation era. But as we move to post-digital transformation era, they are no longer going to be cliche words, and that's why information systems audit has to be a key role within the organization. Now, what's now the role of information systems auditors? IS auditors are now becoming more and more important because organizations are turning to you and asking IS auditors how to manage specific risks, specifically in emerging technologies that are keeping and processing massive organization data that are going to inform strategic decisions of organization. Now, to address the impact of the enterprise risk, auditors will need to rethink its focus on traditional IT audit processes and procurements. Yeah? Now, they have to include a paradigm shift to now looking at the overall governance structures of the organization, the challenges in the management of some things like outsourcing, because outsourcing now is a driver. When you say you've gone to the cloud, definitely you've outsourced a function. How do you now position yourself as an IS auditor to provide value for the organization? And then the issues of compliance come about. For the last 3 years, we've seen so many regulations coming on board that touch on privacy. Initially, IT audit was just geared to looking at risks and controls on traditional IT implementations. Now, how do you now involve the aspect of auditing privacy, compliance to privacy in organizations? Now, auditors can help business assess, manage, and govern the risks associated with the current emerging technologies to ensure benefits are realized. And this just now, as we discuss this, IT audit have picked 2 major methodologies. There is the CISA guideline standards on audit, and then there is the Sarbanes-Oxley COSO standard. COSO stands for Committee of Organization of the Tradeway Commission. Now, both of these standards activities are geared towards what we call an integrated risk-based approach to the IS audit. We will be looking in detail to what risk-based IT audit specifically means. Now, IS audit, like any other audit, has got three phases. One is the aspect of planning. There is the risk assessment and business process analysis. There is the performance of the audit work, and then there is reporting. In other models, I've looked like the ISACA one, it proposes three major phases where they've fused the risk assessment and business process analysis and the performance of audit work into one process that is called fieldwork and documentation. But when it comes to IS audit, these processes, two processes need to be distinct because the key major processes are the audit planning and the risk assessment and business process analysis in IS auditing. If these two processes, you do not get them right from the start, then basically you're going to perform a wrong or ineffective, inefficient audit work, and definitely you're going to get the wrong reporting or reporting on the things, or even audit at an area that doesn't take a lot of audit resources to an area that doesn't require so much attention, while leaving out organization exposed to major risks. Now, let's look at the planning phase. Now, when you look at the planning phase, I will take you through the phases. I believe most guys understand the audit cycle, IS audit cycle. So I'll take you through the phases quite somehow very fast, but putting emphasis on what you can do it to make it more efficient. Now, looking at the planning phase, the first thing you need to have as an auditor, whether internal or what, is the audit charter. The audit charter, in other terms, can just be the terms of reference. It should delineate the purpose. What is the purpose of the audit? Yeah, the responsibility. Now, the authority. You need to have authority. For instance, you need to access systems, client systems or business systems. You need to have the level of authority that gives you access to those information. You need access data, private information, and all that. There needs to be accountability for the actions or the audit work that is going to be done. The purpose, you need to state the mission, the objective. What is the overall objective of doing that particular audit work? Are you going to do just a specific audit looking at specific controls, or you're going to look at the general controls of the audit? So this one should come very clearly at the, then there is the letter of representation from management. And this is an aspect that is usually most audit work, people oversee this. And this letter basically provides you a basis for having management commitment that they will be able to take you through the systems that are responsible for, and be able to discuss openly if there are any risks that are not mitigated, or if there are any controls that are not being followed, or a policy that is being violated, and that they are responsible for managing those particular kind of risks and those kind of systems. So you need to have that letter of representation from management. Then, now, a question comes now, in the current world, things have moved. We cannot continue to be looking at IS audit the way we used to look at it. So how do you improve the efficiency at the planning stage? One, implementing audit management software. You can have a system in place, automate. There are so many systems that are in the market that you can put in place that automates that functions that will maybe tell you, is this time you can reschedule some audits that it alerts you automatically. It keeps some audit information and keeps on reminding you of controls that you are supposed to go under the audit. These are things that are there. Then there is the aspect of control self-assessment. Now, this one, you take the audit to the users themselves, where you engage them in self-assessing to determine, are they really complying? Then you coming just there with an audit plan and taking them through. So this one also assists the audit to get information quite very easily, and in also understanding the business process and the pain areas. Then there is the aspect of auditing horizontally. Auditing horizontally, now I'll take an example of an application. An organization runs so many applications. Other than an auditor going to audit each and every application, and then if there is a risk that was cross-cutting the organization, then you'll have repeated reporting of an element in that audit report. To avoid that kind of a thing, what you do in auditing horizontally, you pick like an area like, let's say, change management. Yeah, you can look something like change management. You look at change management, and then you say, I want to check how each and every application reposed on change management complies to the change management policy. Then the auditor will be having that procedure of change management and just go and pick some information within several applications and make a conclusion, other than going to every doing the vertical kind of auditing each and every application, and yet maybe there are parameters or controls that cut across, so that you do that horizontal auditing, which can save a lot of time and your efficiency in auditing. I think you can stop me if you think there is a question you need me to attend to. Or maybe questions will come after the presentation. Mercy?
You can ask questions in the chat, and then if we need to stop, we can alert you.
Okay, fine. So now let's look at phase 2, which is called now the risk assessment and the business process analysis. One thing about auditing and especially when somebody is doing an external information systems audit, you are coming to audit from an external perspective. That usually means is the understanding of the business. An auditor, an IS auditor, you must understand the business process. Take a lot of time to understand the business itself, its operational environment before you're proceeding with your task. So when you adopt a risk-based kind of audit approach, which is majorly recommended, it will assist you to understand the business processes and the business operational environment inside out. Now, a risk-based audit approach will also enable you to do what you call improved continuous audit process. And this approach is used to assess the risk and assist the IS auditor to either do a compliance testing or substantive test. So you can decide when you've done a risk assessment, and this is why the risk-based approach is important, to direct the audit resource either to do a substantive test or to do a compliance test. A compliance test is just you are doing general tests, things that cut across the organization to test either the presence or absence of a control. But the substantive test, you are testing a specific control to determine whether it does what it's supposed to be doing and doing it efficiently or how the organization is expected to perform. So when you do a risk-based assessment, it will assist you to determine also whether you're going to do a compliance test or a substantive test. Now, auditors also rely on internal operation controls as well as knowledge of the organization. Even though you're going to do a risk-based approach, you do not give hindsight to other elements of the organization. And that's what this statement means. You need also to understand other aspects of the organization, internal, operational, environmental, and just the realm of that business operation environment. Now, after this, you need to also, as you do the risk-based audit, you need to relate, and this risk-based audit approach, that's what will help you in a big way, to relate the cost-benefit analysis of a control to the non-risk and allowing practical choices. You can, and in allowing of practical choices is where the auditor is going to give recommendation further on. So when you understand the business environment properly, you will provide a recommendation for control that you freely consider as the cost-benefit effect of it also, and this applicability. And then one way of now improving this kind of approach is using data analytics. Yeah. So the data analytics will enable you to drill deeper, use a lot of data, and it will tell you whether you're going to increase the scope of your audit or reduce the scope. It will tell you where you're going to focus, let's say in high-risk areas, determine the high-risk areas, or reduce the scope sector where analytics suggests the risk may be less. An example is, for instance, using of system event monitoring tools, what you call the SIM tool. It collects a lot of data, log information. If an auditor can be having access to this information and look at where so much risk is coming from this data that these solutions are collecting from various organizational nodes, then you will focus your audit in a specific area first before you go to other areas that are posing less risk. And this decision is now going to be given to be data driven. You're not just making a decision from hearsay or from what the business perceives. No, it's actually a decision that is being made based on facts. It's a data-driven kind of a decision. Let's look at just some of the risks to consider. There is what we call the inherent risk. Basically, you're going to consider 3 risks in IS audit: inherent risk, detection risk, and control risk. I know, guys, most guys who are in IS audit understand this risk. Now, an inherent risk basically is just a risk that exists before a control has been implemented, yeah? And whether in combination or in isolation of controls of an organization. So in considering inherent risks, an IS auditor should consider both pervasive and detailed IS control risk or specific control risk. Now, let's specific, basically pervasive control risks are like general controls. There are not controls that cut across, and detailed or specific control risks are specific to specific control risks. So now when we look at the pervasive control risks, what should an auditor basically consider? One is the integrity of the IS management and IS management experience and knowledge. The information systems management and information management experience and knowledge. Because if there is an experience in this field or less knowledge, then it will cut across the organization, because there will be the aspects of strategic planning in the organization. They'll be now implementing or recommendation for specific implementation that does not support the overall organizational function. There'll be gaps in the overall organizational structure, IT strategic function to support the organizational goals and objectives. So it's very important for this to be looked at. Then there is changes in the information systems management. How are configuration management done? How are employees changed? How these kind of changes, how do they come about? So there is the pressure on information systems management, which may be predispose them to conceal or misstate information. How is the IS information systems management function structured? Is it adequate for the load of work within the organization? Or are they underrepresented? Or are they overrepresented? Because this one will either lead to people either overseeing some things as they happen, conceal information or misstate some information, because they cannot be able to manage the information management function or the IT function properly and have a 360 view to it. Now there is the nature of organization, business, and systems. This one is just self-explanation. Then the factors affecting the organization industry as a whole. Yeah, there are several specific risks that are risks that an organization will face. An organization that operates in the financial sector are not the same risks that a government organization is going to face. So you need also to consider the organizational operational environment, the industries where this organization is operating. Telcos may face different risks compared to banks, to a typical bank, although they might be doing some financial transaction at some specific place. Yeah. Now the level of third-party influence on the control of systems being audited. I've just mentioned the aspect of if you have a data cloud strategy, you've decided you are moving all your operations systems to be hosted on cloud. Which control do you have over that environment? How much do you rely on the third party to maintain your systems? This one should also be in consideration when you're considering pervasive controls. Now, findings from from and the date of previous audits. When considering performance, could also consider the what did the previous audit state? Were the recommendation taken into consideration? Are the risks that were identified still existing? And if so, was management notified? Have management accepted the risks? Or is there any current initiatives going on to mitigate those risks? Now, let's look at the specific or detailed IS control. These are now risks that are come about through the life cycle of an information systems development or implementation or acquisition. So you need to look at the integrity of the information systems management and the information systems experience and knowledge. It cut across both on pervasive and on this. So this one it repeated. Okay, sorry. Let's go to the control risk. Control risk. We've just said. I'll explain it through an example. An organization has got several IT applications or a massive IT application, several computer systems running, we have allowed mobile. So there are massive logs that are being collected. And if you are doing, we have a manual process to reviewing these logs to identify risks, there is a probability that this control will not be able to capture that risk and alert you on time, and for that risk to be mitigated or prevented on time. So that's basically what we talk about the control risk. So the IS auditor should also assess the control risk as high unless relevant internal controls are in place. Because one, I've just mentioned the one for audit. Supposing a firewall had picked some, let's say, a network swipe, somebody's trying to scan an IP that is repeatedly scanning your environment. And then somehow, because of the number of logs, the volume of logs, the guys who are managing the network security could not be able to identify it. And when this one persists, maybe that swipe might be able to go through. So that one, there is a control, yes, of a firewall, but then that control, somehow there is a loophole in it. It cannot be able, people cannot be able to meet a risk that is being identified by this control or being mitigated by this control on time and prevent this risk from materializing. Yeah. So in the event, as an IS auditor, this should be one of the high risk that you should be able to consider. Unless the people responsible for managing, responsible for that risk and for that control have identified that particular risk. When you're doing the audit, they tell you, yes, we know we are doing manual log collection, but this is the mitigation we will put in place. So unless these people have identified, there's a process where they've identified this risk and the risk has been evaluated, and there is another compensating control that has been put in place, and you think it is effective, and you've tested and proved to be operating appropriately, then you do not rate this risk as high. But otherwise, any control risk should be rated as high risk. Then there is the detection risk. So in determining the level of substantive testing required, the IS auditor also should consider both for detection, when considering detection risk, is the assessment of the inherent risk. When you assess the inherent risk, it will also put an input into the inherent risk. So up to there, is there any question? Hello, Mercy, moderator.
There is a question.
Yes.
Norbert asked, I appreciate the presentation, which depicts the current audit process,
Yes.
but shouldn't we focus on how the audit process should be improved to address the new norm now that the IT threat scope is shifting?
Yes, I will address this further on in the discussion. There is a place for emerging technologies where I'm talking about what audit should focus on emerging technologies, on things like cloud, on things like IoT, on things like that one is part of this, and that's why I'm going very fast in this one, because it's just a normal process and picking up areas where you can easily improve.
There's no other question.
Okay. So as I had said, risk-based information systems audit approach enables us to develop an overall and effective IS audit plan, which will consider potential weaknesses or absence of controls and determines whether this could lead to significant deficiency or material weakness. This one I've gone through. So how well do you conduct this efficiently in the current information or data-driven world? One is you understand the client business environment and operations, and then obtain an understanding of the audit universe. So let's look at how to understand the audit universe. You understand the audit universe by, one, identifying areas where the risk is unacceptably high. You've done a risk assessment, yeah? So if you've done the risk assessment, then you've already identified areas where you think the risk is unacceptably high. So now that will understand you to focus your audit, and is in the process of understanding your audit universe. So, and identify critical control systems that address high inherent risks. Yeah. Then assess the uncertainty that exists in relation to the critical control systems. There might be a risk that exists, it had been identified, and the uncertainty is about, maybe they said there was no enough funds at that particular time to implement a control. So you do not know when these funds will be available to implement that control, right? So that is an uncertainty that exists in relation to critical control systems. Now, let's look at understanding a business process. We've said for you to do a proper risk-based audit, you need to understand the business process. Also, you need to understand your audit universe. Now, these are just a simple process of, we'll take you through the process of understanding the business process. One is you must obtain an understanding of the client business process. Then you map the internal control environment. Then you identify areas of control weaknesses. So in a larger scale, in detail, this one now you will do when you are doing the business process analysis itself. So you will identify mega and major sub-processes. And as you are doing this, you are asking yourself as an auditor, what could go wrong? And recording what could go wrong, each and every what could go wrong, you are recording them or documenting them. So when you identify the mega and sub-processes, you ask yourself, what could go wrong? Then you document key processes related to the sub-processes. Then you identify related issues with the activity. Then you perform a walkthrough, the compliance test. Because now you've identified, you've now looked at the entire business process. Now you've gone to identify the major and sub-processes. Now you walk through these processes to identify if there are any compliance issues that need to be adhered. So you identify just those compliance issues, because later on you're going to audit against these compliance issues that affect that particular process. Then you test whether the controls are adequate. If there are any control that is in place, is it adequate when you're going through the processes? Then if the control is adequate, is it effective? Is it working the way it should work? Then assess the risk and document. Then you develop an audit program to be used later, as in to go through now the process of auditing. Now, phase 3 in performance is the performance of audit work. Now, in performance of audit work, basically you are going to provide supervision and gather audit evidence and document the audit work. Now, this objective is achieved through, one, you establish an internal review process where there must be someone, either senior or somewhere, who has more knowledge, will be reviewing of another the work of another one. Yeah, so that it is not you cannot have those kind of materiality errors. Obtain sufficient and reliable relevant evidence. Now, this is done through inspection. You're going to observe, inquiry, confirmation, computation and recomputation of calculations where necessary. Then, of course, there is the aspect of documenting the audit work, describing audit work done, and audit evidence gathered to support the auditor's findings. Now, how do you get also, as we do this audit work, what are we going to consider? So you will develop definitely an audit work plan and an audit program. We've just said what you need to consider in doing the planning phase, which of course keep in consideration the nature of the business. Now the objectives, which will have been clearly defined in the audit charter, and the timing. Yeah, of course, as an auditor, you need to do your timing properly, especially when it comes to information systems audit. You do not start auditing systems and you want to run maybe test tools or systems at peak hours when it will maybe affect the functionality. Maybe you want to query, to get interviews from key personnel within the organization, and it's a peak time of the organization where they'll not give you the attention that you require and give you the information that you require. Now, there is the extent of the resources required to the audit. Of course, you need to know how big is the audit, how big is this organization, what is the kind of work I'm looking at, so that you can provide available adequate audit resources. Then, based on compliance testing carried out in the prior phase, now we develop an audit program. Now, telling the nature, time, and extent of the audit procedures. Now, these are talking specific audit procedures. Then you consider both the general, pervasive, and specific controls that will be now tested. So let's look at the controls, control review. We've been talking about the general, pervasive, specific, detail controls. Now, this is the control. Basically, this is the control environment of any IT environment. So that any IT environment, whether complex, simple, or whatever. This is the basic control environment. Now, general pervasive controls is recommended that they are evaluated based on the COBIT framework. Yeah. So COBIT is a control objectives for information technology related. It's a best practice developed by CISA. We'll be reviewing it later. And so now, general pervasive controls. Basically what you will be looking at. First of all, you review the ICT strategy and other policy document, because ICT strategy delineates the direction of the organization is going to take, and the policies now define how the strategy is going to be implemented and guide how the strategy is going to be achieved. So then you have to look at application program development methodology. These are under the general because they cut across. Application development methodology. Did they involve things like defense in depth when they are doing the application? Do they conform to a specific system? If the strategy says this organization is going to adapt, let's say DevOps as a method, as a framework for application development, then you as an auditor, you need to understand what does DevOps has to do, and then you look at it, an application development project. Did they follow the methodology? Yeah. How are change management aspects managed in the development cycle? So then you look at the systems implementation methodology. Was it followed? Does it comply both to the strategy, to the organization? Does it achieve the organization mission? Are there legal and regulatory compliance that are supposed to have been observed at implementation? Because we will be looking at other aspects of privacy. Currently, organizations like are facing issues with privacy. Reason because when they were going, let's say, to do a social engagement or even a mobile application, design privacy was not considered at design, which is now an issue. So correcting it at implementation at already maturity of the application becomes a major problem and leads to several losses to enterprises. Now there's the aspect of business continuity planning and disaster recovery. Is under the general and pervasive controls. Now, looking at now specific controls. Specific controls, basically, we're going to look at the application control review, operating system control review, and the network control review. So at application control, an auditor should be able to look at the aspect of transactions. Is this application be able to give, how is there control, input control to this application? How is the output? Is the application giving results that it's supposed to give? What tests were done when the application was being rolled out? Yeah, there is the controls that are within. What is the authentication mechanism for this application? The access that is given to this. Yeah, the environment that is if it is hosted in a cloud, which control do we have over it? Which agreements are there? Do we provide a protection for personal identifiable information? Which legal and regulatory frameworks affect us? Yeah. Now, there is the aspect of user operations and then the audit trails. Does the application offer audit trail? Many times, I've seen several applications that have been implemented, but you find at the application level, there's very insufficient audit trail. People concentrate on providing at a transaction level on the database. That's where there's a lot of logging and on the access on the network level. But an application should be able to provide sufficient audit trail. Yeah, so as an auditor, you need to review that and look at it, which kind of audit trails that is this application supposed to do. And the level of audit trail that is supposed to give application supposed to give varies with the application itself, the criticality, the risk that is there. And that's why you are supposed to have done a risk assessment. Yeah. Then there is operating systems control. We are looking at vulnerability assessment. Yeah. Has there been a vulnerability assessment been done? And if there was a vulnerability assessment been done, there are recommendations that were done. These are things we're going to look for. Is there a process of now implementing controls after a vulnerability assessment has been done to implement controls that are going to mitigate the risks identified? How do they get to implement controls in an ever-dynamic environment of IT systems, as vulnerabilities usually come by as we go? There's no system that is just released as an OS. It is secure as a package. Then it stays secure forever. No, vulnerabilities come by every day. So what process is there to assess and manage these vulnerabilities? Is it automated? Is it manual? And if it is manual, what are interventions that are there, controls that are there to mitigate against things like what we have just discussing, the control risks? Then there is the aspect of access control. What controls, what processes are there, what procedures are there to manage access to this? What technical controls are there to manage the access? Then the capacity and performance. How are they managing capacity and performance? Do people just wake up one day and say, now we need a server that has got this capacity, or we need to migrate to Red Hat? We've been using maybe a Windows server. Is it backed by specific performance-related issues? If it is performance, how do they monitor? Is there automated monitoring mechanisms in place? Is the system performance tuning, has it been done to capacity? What informs even the performance and even sizing of those systems? Now, there's the host defense control systems, like the antiviruses. Are they in place? How are they updated? How are they acquired? So then there's the aspect of network controls. Now, of course, on network controls, there is the aspect of course, attack and penetration testing. Is there a procedure in place that defines how often are we going to do a penetration testing on our environment? And so, if the penetration testing, if at all there is one that was done, what action was taken on the results of that penetration testing? If at all there were some risks that were identified. More often, there is no way you'll do a penetration testing and find there is no risk that has been identified. Always there will be a risk. And in IT environment, you will not be able to, you can't as in put in place control to manage all the risk, but it's a continuous process. And that's why it is very important to see what the previous event, like let's say vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, audit, is very important to an IS auditor. Then there is the aspect of perimeter security. How is the network designed? The aspect, do they have intrusion prevention systems, intrusion detection systems, firewalls? If they are running web application, a network firewall cannot be able to mitigate issues related to web application security. You need to have something like a web application firewall. How is it designed? Is it you might have a very complex environment with very expensive, complex devices, but then even the design itself does not protect the organization. And this is where an IS auditor also needs to leverage on the expertise of other IT professionals, network engineers, application developers, to understand and provide an insightful and proper information that will result in proper recommendation and reporting. Then there is the data encryption mechanisms, and that is something that is even relevant currently. Most organizations have implemented this aspect of work from home now. So most hosts are connecting, people are connecting from home. What mechanisms are there to protect data in transit? Do they connect through VPNs? Is there encryption mechanism to protect this data, both at transit and data at rest? So then there is the network topology, both internal connectivity and external connectivity. How somebody connects to an environment from inside and from outside is different, because the security requirements for both are totally different, and even capabilities. Then there is the external connectivity, remote access. I've just mentioned it. The devices. If you have allowed people to connect to your environment, as an auditor, your organization has gone ahead and say people should connect from home. They should work from home using their own devices. Does the organization have control over these personal devices? And if the organization does not have control over these personal devices, that it cannot be able to push updates, cannot be able to push antivirus installations into those devices and monitor those devices, then what is the compensating control that will not enable the organization to be exposed? Is there a policy in place that governs this? Will you allow things like jailbroken phones that have already, their security is already compromised by design, to connect to your environment? These are things that, as an auditor, when you're doing this control review, you need to review and advise accordingly. Now, I had just mentioned the aspect of
Before you go,
yes,
Javan asks, in the aspect of general controls,
yes,
clearly give us the focus points
yes,
in IT governance and IT
yes,
management in
yes,
relation to the audit, and
yes,
under what circumstance
yes.
should the two be reviewed?
Okay, one aspect I've found it to be very critical when it comes to under general controls. One, the strategy, the IT strategy. You must look one from the start. How was the IT strategy? Is there, first of all, an IT strategy in place? And then number two, how was the IT strategy developed? Yeah, and is the IT strategy adequate? Because this is the roadmap that informs any other things, any other technology-related thing. Because if the IT strategy is not communicating to the organization objectives, then from the start, everything else downhill there'll be a miss somewhere. So you'll find now IT does not offer value to the organization per se. Yeah, it will be like what we call a strategic approach to information technology, but the organization will be having what we call a system approach to the information technology. An environment where somebody just comes, I need Microsoft Word, you purchase for them. We need to go to the cloud to use Microsoft 365. You see, now you'll be just moving with user needs, systems need, but IT will not be a strategic partner to the organization, which is a very key element. So as an auditor, you need first of all to look at that. Then number two, in this IT strategy, definitely they've said there are key initiatives that have been aligned to achieve these organization objectives. So there's an aspect of application, like let's say a program development. There must be a standard as a good practice, how this application was developed. So you are generally looking at policies, procedures, strategies. That's what you'll be looking at under general controls. So I hope I answered that question.
And then there's also another question by Rafael.
Yes.
How frequent is it to do external pen tests? And who should prepare the pen test action plan? Is it the consultant? Is it the client?
It is a two-faceted kind of thing. How frequent? I'll answer. It depends your business environment. The general recommendation is usually say penetration testing, a complete audit end to end by external provider should be done at least once after 2 years. But a pen test should be done annually, every year. But I'll put an override. It depends your operational environment. You cannot be like, let's say, a financial institution that does volume transaction that is almost everything is done online. It has a mobile application, there is mobile banking, there is all of those things. And then you are going to wait for 2 years to do an end-to-end information systems audit. No, it cannot. So you also have to understand your organization. That's why it's important to understand your business environment for you to be able to. But as a best practice, it's recommended pen test to be done at least once in a year, and not the word at least once a year. And for IS audit, at least complete, at least once, twice, after every 2 years. And then the aspect of engaging a consultant, it depends on the technical capacity you have. If you think you have technical capacity to be able to develop the work plan for penetration testing, which I think, in my purview, when it comes to penetration testing, an IS auditor can effectively develop an audit, let's say an audit TRS, yeah. But when it comes to penetration testing, is a very focused technical thing. So that one, if you need either to partner with IT so that you can develop the TRS, or involve somebody else to assist you to develop the TRS, and then you engage somebody else to do the actual penetration testing.
No other question. We have 10 minutes to go.
Okay, so 10 minutes to go. I don't know. Control objectives for information-related technology, I've just said, is a best practice for IT practice, and it was developed by for IT governance, basically, and it was and IS audit is a function of IT governance. So it is developed by Information Systems Audit and Control Association and IT Governance Institute in 1992. Now, why COBIT? I'm bringing up the aspect of COBIT. COBIT will provide you with a set of generally accepted measures, indicators, processes, and best practices to assist in maximizing the benefits derived through the use of information technology and development appropriate. Now, COBIT will help you to meet multiple needs of management by bridging the gap between business risk, control needs, and technical issues. Apply COBIT framework while executing the planning, both planning, executing, and reporting results of an audit. If you look at the 34 processes mapped under the 4 main areas of audit, you'll not miss anything as you plan and execute, and even as you report. So the 34 processes, control processes defined by audit. One is the aspect of planning and organizing. Then there is the acquisition and implementation aspect. Then there's the delivery and support. Then there is monitoring. If an IS auditor, you can adapt this control objectives and define under 4 domains of COBIT, you are less likely to miss anything as you perform your audit, and you'll be more efficient in doing the audit. So I personally recommend for auditors to really consider this 4 domain and the 34 processes. So ways to enhance efficiency in performing, now the aspect of performing the audit work itself. One of them is to get primary access to evidence. Traditional audit aspect have been, you request for IT, give me this evidence. I can see you say this procedure says you do this when you're doing the change management. Give me this evidence. Can you give me a screenshot? Can you give me maybe the logs that were this? But now this one just lengthens the audit procedure. So one way to accelerate or to enhance this is to provide the auditor with read-only access to some of these systems, yeah, during the performance of the audit works, yeah. An example, like let's look at vulnerability management, yeah. If there is a system that does vulnerability, there is an automated system that scans your environment for vulnerabilities. You do not need I do not see where the problem should be if an auditor is just given a read-only access to this, so they can see by themselves and compare the vulnerability that was done maybe last month or last quarter, depending on their circles. This was the report that was got out of the system. When it goes to the system itself, it says, this is the report, which means this risk was mitigated, this one is still pending, and you raise an issue on it, document it. Yeah. So that one, you save a lot of time, you save back and forth, and you avoid those errors of misstatement. Yeah. When the guy was copying the information and sending it to you and all that. Yeah. So another example is audit logging. If an auditor is given access to something like a SIM tool, yeah, that does the automatic logging of system, they can themselves look at the logs. Other than getting the logs being copied to a device or to something else, then you can go to analyze them elsewhere. It will not. So that will increase your efficiency. Then repurpose generalized audit softwares. Generalized audit software, they are computer-aided softwares to audit. For instance, if you have a computer assisted audit software that is just meant to batch process information extracted from a DB that was meant for financial, to look at validity of financial transaction, this software still can be repurposed to audit a system that runs that Oracle DB. Yeah. For some, so you can relook at those systems and repurpose the generalized utilization. So then the aspect of reporting, I think that one is just about giving clear recommendations that have got backed by evidence, with conclusions and recommendations that are you've considered aspects of cost-benefit analysis, are very relevant, and with various qualifications. So I'll not go. So to enhance reporting, one is you utilize the ISACA glossary. ISACA glossary is a definition of various terms when it comes to audit, so that when you are reporting, you have a uniform way of reporting, so that you do not define a vulnerability in this way today, tomorrow you are defining it differently. So when you have a reference to one source of truth, like the ISACA glossary, so far this is the only one I've seen in audit that has got all the definitions that it pertains to audit. When you are defining something like a detection risk, you define it across the organization. And another way is it explains it in a very good, proper way that even non-technical individuals will be able to understand what you're saying. So it enhances your understandability of your report. In some instances, use videos there to capture some evidences. And this can be referred to later when you play them back when you're doing the analysis and doing a recommendation. Another one is track and measure the progress, yeah, of any control or anything that had been reported. Then there is the assurance finding register, yeah. Now this one has got the aspect of significance, the status, owner, who owns that risk, where is it, the department, the region, this was the system, and all that. If you have this register, then it enhances your kind of report. So many questions will not come by that you are recording this risk. We have these branches. Which branch was it found from? You are likely to miss this if you are doing an audit for a very big organization. So, but if you have an assurance register, then all these elements can easily be captured very easily. So let's quickly look at emerging technologies. I was told I have 10 minutes, but Marcy, I don't think if I manage with 10 minutes. From now I can manage with 10 minutes, but not from the time we had started 10 minutes. So let me quickly look at, and this is where somebody had asked a question about the emerging technologies. And I also said that enterprises, as I said initially, are turning to internal audit and asking them to help them manage new specific risks or emerging technologies. Yeah, emerging technologies basically can bring very massive benefit but also they come with various risks. Now, a core strength of auditing profession is the assessment of risk controls. So if these emerging technologies will come with opportunities, definitely, and they come with the risk, then an IOS auditor audit function becomes very important in adoption or leveraging on this on the business strategic advantages of this. Now, what should be an auditor focus on when dealing with the aspect of emerging technologies? One of them, you must get a holistic understanding, yeah, and the changes in the industry. If you are in the banking industry, how is big data impacting banking industry, finance institution? If you are in government, how is big data doing that? Yeah, how is Internet of Things being used in manufacturing? How is it? So you need to understand an open, holistic of the emerging technologies. So if you are a nice auditor and you've been sitting somewhere and thinking these are techno-savvy things for guys who are in IT, no, you are definitely wrong. Yeah. Now, auditors should consider then the risks resulting from the implementation of these new technologies, how those risks may differ from those that arise from more traditional legacy systems, and we'll be looking at this. Yeah. Auditors should also consider whether specialized skills are necessary to determine the impact of new technologies and to assist in the risk assessment, understanding of the design, implementation, operating effectiveness of these controls. Some of these new, like Internet of Things, if you are in manufacturing, they're implementing sensors. It's a new thing. So you should be able also to seek help if you do not really understand, you do not have specific knowledge in it, just to help you understand them end to end and how they impact your industry or your organization. So I'll talk about, there are two major, I talked about the post-digital transformation, and there are two major terms that are being coined, and they were first coined by Accenture in around 2018. And this is SMARC, and there's one called DAC. SMARC stands for Mobile, Social, Analytics, and Cloud. And in the current business or in the future post-digital transformation era, we're no longer going to talk about social media in isolation or mobile computing isolation or analytics. No. When you talk about social media, you'll have to be able to talk about mobile, analytics, and cloud for you to gain an end-to-end business value out of it. So things have changed. There's the social media engagement, there is the connected customers, collaboration in community, crowdsourcing, now riding on mobiles, yeah, and then businesses are deriving value on this through discovering value through the patterns and prediction, doing the data analytics that is being collected. And all these things are being hosted on the cloud. The cloud, why cloud? Cloud offers agility. It has got the aspect of collaboration because you can host your systems anywhere in the world. Yeah, there is the economies of scale and then globalization and competitiveness. So, and then there is the other one that is going to be called DAC. That definitely should be an interest for. Now, DAC stands for Distributed Ledger Artificial Intelligence, reality or assisted or augmented reality, and then there is the aspect of cloud computing. We all know distributed ledger technology. The most known invention of this is the aspect of the cryptocurrencies, the likes of Bitcoin. But now, distributed ledger technology is becoming implemented for commercial purposes, real commercial in industries, in supply chain. Yeah, there is the artificial intelligence, automated business function, scan unprecedented amounts of data, make the benefits of analytics more widely available. Yeah, augmented reality, people will be able to shop in real time and fit even some things like clothes remotely without visiting even a store. So quantum computing is going to solve most complex mathematical functions. And this one is going to be a risk. There are risks to it, a risk like what will it have an impact on cybersecurity in algorithms, in cryptography. Now it means some cryptographic functions that are being used to protect systems currently will be nonsense because these computers will be able to compute those in minutes. Now, let's look at cloud computing. Specifically, I've selected cloud computing because it's a very wide area of interest. Now, what should auditors look for in cloud computing? First of all, what is the good practice in cloud computing? Now, I'll refer you to, generally in the industry, there is no standard as per se developed as I say, this is the good practice for cloud computing. But there are two institutions that have developed. There is the Cloud Alliance that has developed the Cloud Security Alliance controls matrix. And then there is ISACA's control objective for cloud computing, which is controls and assurance in the cloud. Just refer to these standards. They provide you an insightful way of how, from what are the good practices an organization should consider or implement as it moves to the cloud. And these are very insightful information for IS auditors that will give them a benchmark against which to model their audit of the cloud environment with the organization. Now, audit focus on the cloud should be, one is the contractual agreements. What agreements are there between you and your cloud provider? Do you have, in the agreement, are you able to audit their environment? Or you rely on their third parties who audit and they just give you the information? You need to understand this. Compliance requirement. Do they comply to the legal and regulatory requirement in your business environment and in your country? Let's say you host something can I say something like on Amazon? But in Kenya, we've just implemented the privacy regulation laws. Now, as you move there, will you be complying with those laws or will you not be complying with them? If you are in the European Union, GDPR, are you in compliance as you move to the cloud? So you need to understand your environment and know what are the compliance requirements to those cloud providers comply, or which are the controls that are there. Now, the commissioning. Tomorrow, I've moved to Amazon Cloud. I've hosted my environment, or on Safaricom Cloud. I've hosted my systems there. Then after 2 days or 2 years, I need to move from Safaricom. I go to Liquid because of maybe issues with the contract. How will I decommission my systems from Safaricom and move to Liquid? Will they provide me with technical assistance to move seamlessly? Or I'll be left to my, and even, will I know what is the assurance that all my data will have been wiped from Safaricom as I move to the other provider? So those aspects of the commission should also be considered. As an auditor, you need to review that is in place. Access control. Who accesses this environment? How do they access it? Yeah. What rights do they have? Then availability, reliability, and resilience. This cloud provider, what availability assurances are they giving you? Do they have a secondary site? Do they have redundancies within their system? How reliable is their systems in the aspect of capacity or performance? How resilient is their systems? Now, there's the aspect you need also to consider principles of cloud risks. There are principles that govern cloud risks, like management commitment to accept risks or to own the risks from the cloud. Management commitment to sponsor or to those principles should be adhered. There's the specification of third parties. Who has certified this cloud service provider? Yeah. If somebody is running a data center and is saying it's a tier 3 data center, which means they have all the redundancies, they are compliant, who certified them? Who audits the infrastructure? Is there an audit report that is reliable? Who audited them? Can you be able to see that audit report? Yeah. Then backup and recovery. How do you do your disaster recovery on that cloud? Will you be provided with technical assistant? Will you be provided with the infrastructure on that? So that you are not caught flat-footed. So that will be an audit focus on cloud. Now, quickly on smart devices, also on emerging technology. I've just talked about Internet of Things. Now, audit focus will be on policy. Is there a policy that governs bring your own device or bring your own everything? People to come with their own devices to the organization, mobile devices. How do people, is there a policy that governs how people connect? Those devices, do they have host protection solutions like antivirus, anti-malware? If not, how do we, is there a mitigating control? Encryption, that information that is stored on that employee's device in his home or her home, how is that information at rest? Or when they are transmitting information or accessing your systems, is that channel encrypted? Have they considered using like VPN to connect? The secure transmission through VPN, have said just say device management. How do you manage this device? You have a mobility management solution in place that you can wipe a device when a staff records a device has gotten lost, and it is a high level staff like a CEO. who has got maybe some rights, or an IT guy, because a laptop has gotten lost, a mobile device has, and he had a remote access to enterprise systems. How do you manage that? Do you have a mobile management that can wipe up, that can easily block out that device automatically? How do you do that? Will we know if somebody asks the organization just on the fly, how many mobile devices are connecting to the environment? How many staff have got VPN access to this organization? Will you be able to tell? So that kind of access. Then I've talked about the aspect of access control. Access control, who has what? Or when people connect remotely, they just access to every system. Who has access to what remotely? Is there a way of putting in place controls? Is the network segmented that people are connecting remotely come through this way, so the risk is managed like this way? Then is there a staff awareness training in place, which is a very key. The weakest link to mobile staff, to mobile resources, is people themselves. So are there awareness programs in place? How is this awareness program scheduled? Is there a schedule that is adhered to? Every this will be doing this awareness. Is it automated? How is it done? Yeah.
Internet of Things is changing much.
I will jump that for Internet of Things. Just to bring you to speed about the aspect, as auditors, you need to also to know how the world is it's becoming more interconnected, and the devices are becoming more smart, collecting more data for organization, and this is not just device, even people themselves are becoming connected. Now, there are aspects of privacy. Privacy initially has never been considered in the risks of organizations, and with now coming up with several regulations on privacy, now privacy is becoming a big risk for every organization, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're not complying to legal and regulatory requirements in the domain that you are operating in. Now let's look at IoT privacy risks. Yeah. Now, privacy issues will also always materialize when you're using Internet of Things, when the following is not considered. And this should be an area of focus for auditors: data collection. As an auditor, you must understand what kind of information does my IoT ecosystem collect. And Internet of Things, I'm talking about your mobile phones, from your social media platform you've connected to. Which kind of information does it collect? Yeah, you have to understand that information that is collected, who owns that data? Is it the organization that owns that data, the telecommunication company that facilitates you, or whoever has hosted your cloud enterprise, or the user themselves? Who owns that data? Who has the custodial responsibility? In this case, if you, for instance, you are an entity and you've hosted the environment in a cloud or in a collocated infrastructure, yeah, most of the time you'll find the owner of the data, who is the individual, your data subject, the user themselves, they are called data subjects, and the person who is using that data, an enterprise, most of the time they're not the custodians of that data, because that data is hosted maybe in a cloud infrastructure that is owned by a telecommunication company or something else. So who has got the custodial responsibility? Who is supposed to answer to queries when issues come to do with privacy violations? Who is going to answer? Is it the owner of that data? Do you have clauses, privacy clauses that protect you in your organization? Or is it the person who is hosting that data? Or is it you, the entity that collects that data? Then there's the aspect of data retention and disclosures. What procedures are in place for you to disclose personal data to third parties? Yeah. How long should you retain customer data, or financial data, or data that you call, whatever data you collect, be it temperature? How long should you have it? Because if you retain data that you are not using and yet can have compliance ramifications on you, then you are having an unnecessary risk to the organization. Then let's look at good practices as auditors in managing smart devices. Yeah, there should be a security assessment integrated from the time during the acquisition process. Yeah. Now, only authorized frameworks and standards. There are frameworks and standards, like if you go to WhatsApp, there is a standard and a framework or an API that defines what an IoT device should be. There should be continuous assessment, and threat monitoring and security patching must be conducted just like any other system. Security should be embedded in the IoT development. We call it defense in depth. Yeah, it should be embedded from the time of acquisition, not something that should be an afterthought. Proper inventory of the IoT ecosystem. You must know, I have this device collecting this information at this particular. The organization must be able to know, to tell with precision. And as an auditor, you need to review and check this. Just not that we have this sensor collecting, but you don't know where it is, what it is, in which state it is. There must be a way that it can be monitored. Then, okay. So what should auditors focus on? There's the aspect of security, resilience, how can we recover in the event of something, health and safety. IoT systems control even health. There are chips that are put in people to monitor their sugar, yeah, to monitor, like I understand there is like a Khan University doing something. Yeah. So it can be catastrophic in industrial systems, sensors that are run industrial systems. How are they tested that they cannot lead to loss of life? There is the aspect of monitoring. How are we monitoring this ecosystem? Yeah. Do we have a smart device strategy in place? Is there policy and procedures and awareness about this IoT ecosystem? How often are we going to have a technology review of this IoT? Because it's a new technology, so it's developing very fast. Yeah, and new changes are coming on board. Social media risk. I don't know, Mercy, should I finish this? I have almost 3 slides.
You can.
Okay. Okay. So now there's the aspect of emerging technology, is the aspect of social media. I'll just talk about the social media risks. One of the risks that as an auditor should consider, negative brand image. There is the aspect of data loss. There is the aspect of distribution of malware. Those are the risks that will come with social media, definitely. So as an organization adapts these platforms for business, now as an auditor, you should be able to review and consider that. Are there awareness programs on the uses of social media platforms in your organization? How are people even set out their Facebook profiles? Because we are talking about reputation. Your CEO has set up a Facebook profile that is a brand to the organization, but it is open to the public for everything. It is not closed. It is not, so anything can happen. It is easy for it to be hijacked. And even if that account is hijacked, a corporate account of social media is hijacked, what are the mitigation measures that have been put in place to recover it or to deal with that kind of reputation loss that will come in? Are there policy and procedures on use of social media in the organization? Who should post what on the organization social media, or even as an individual, key individuals in the organization, are they free to go on social media and post anything? Because these are things that impact the organization overall reputation. That is a risk. A security technology that are there. Then, do you do risk assessment as an IS auditor or social media? I know most of the time we don't even consider it. Have you ever thought of doing a risk assessment? And in this risk assessment, you need to ask yourself: is it really? Should we be on Facebook? Should we be on WhatsApp, on Instagram, and on what? Should we really be there in the first place? What benefit are we deriving from this? What risks are we exposing ourselves into these platforms? How often do we use these platforms? Do our customers access these platforms, or we are just unnecessarily exposing ourselves? Yeah. So should we implement controls like time quotas when employees sitting on enterprise networks should they use the enterprise networks to access social media? And if so, do we impose time quotas when they should be able to, or it's just good for good, depending on the enterprise? So that's a decision that should be made on risk, from a risk approach. Yeah. Then crisis management mitigation. I've just mentioned it. Your account has been hijacked. A social account has been hijacked. As an organization, do you have a way of managing that crisis and even mitigating it? Yeah. Or you'll just be caught flat-footed. Now, auditors should, in social media strategy, there should be a social media strategy. Does the organization understand how people and customers using social media in relation to the organization? How are we using social networking technologies, both internally and externally? Are we gathering data from these technologies to help business strategy and to monitor our brand in this part of the market? Are we defined metrics based on social media networking analysis concepts such as following? Now, the metrics, how does the use of social media networking affect our brand? How does it increase the risk of corporate, employee, and customer data loss? How does it increase the risk of e-commerce transactions? So this should be considered, and this should be driven from an IS point of view. So for blockchain, I'll not mention a lot. Blockchain is still a concept that is coming. I'll not say abstract, but for real enterprise use, it's still so as we adapt these technologies, one of the major things from an IS audit perspective, because blockchain is promising a lot of things. It is promising that aspect of transparency, almost compact security, no single point of failure, no third-party involvement, real-time tracking. So it's almost solving all things that auditors have been looking for in systems. But now, what is it that auditors should look at an blockchain application? One of the major fundamental things that audit should look at is, does the blockchain application live up to its promise? Does it provide the organization with what it is saying it's going to do? If you are running a supply chain application on blockchain that says it's going to eliminate third parties, it's going to provide transparent, tight security, does it provide that? So that is what audit should be now refocusing on it. So now there is a major aspect there used to be cybersecurity, audit function auditing cybersecurity, but now today there's the issues of privacy that have come. And that's what I'm saying, the most traditional IT controls use in an organization, they use us to create borders to stop attackers. Yeah. So there is no accountability for multiple internet channels, corporate relationship with partners, providers, through collaboration of social media and all that. Yeah. So organizations need to start asking themselves, with the advent of privacy regulations, what are the risks that we are exposing ourselves to? Does cybersecurity cater for them? Definitely not. So this is something that should be looked at from a risk perspective and a business perspective. So for what should auditors focus on in the aspect of cybersecurity? Yeah. Those are have repository information, all information assets. Do we have a register of all the information assets? Have we identified them? Review to confirm that the risks to this information assets have been calculated and appropriate risk appetite agreed on by management. Yeah. Have information assets in the IT network system been mapped? What internal security controls exist to segregate information, ensure that who needs to access can do so? Are customer expectation on privacy increasing and response adapted accordingly? Is the organization constantly reviewing the threat environment and controls adjusting countermeasures? I just got to the privacy, which is a major thing. Yeah. So we said traditionally the systems have been designed focus, and the focus has been analyzing risk and responding to threats that affect the security goals. Yeah. Not privacy goals, security goals. So there are risk factors that may affect the rights and freedom of data subjects. Like, for instance, in Kenya, there are two laws: the Kenya Computer Crime and Cyber laws. There is the privacy, data privacy regulations. There is the GDPR. So these are things that will affect most organizations. So as an auditor, you need to ask yourself, why was this data collected? Know the data that is being collected on subjects that can infringe on privacy. Why was it collected? There's some information that organizations are collecting that they don't need to collect and keep it. Yeah. Now, what to look for when you are doing the privacy focus protection is, as an auditor, look for unlinkability. Any information that an organization is collecting, let it be the information that is collected for that subject, for that use. That information should not be linked to another data set, so that somebody can exploit linking this info from your organization and links this information to this link and get to. So there's the aspect, principle of unlinkability should be considered. The principle of transparency. Yeah, you should be transparent enough with the subject. There should be a mechanism that the subject knows that this kind of information is being collected from me when I'm using this application, when I'm using this system, when I'm getting this service from this organization. Be as transparent as possible. Then there is the aspect of it, and even tell the subject, this information we collect, we can share it with this third party, under this circumstance. So there is concept between you and the data subject. Then there is the aspect of intervenability. Is there mechanisms that this data subject can intervene and correct the information if something has updated in their life and they want to update that information, they can correct it and update it. Can they intervene and say, I want this information, my information to be deleted? Yeah, like let's say when somebody closes an account in a bank, also with other legal and regulatory requirements, is there a possibility that information can be deleted also, or you continue keeping the information past the legal requirements? Yeah, so IS auditors generally should defend privacy by design. Now you should start talking about including privacy in systems development, in systems acquisition, so that privacy is included. This aspect of unlinkability, transparency, intervenability is included in design. So I think with that, I have answered that person who had asked about the question of emerging technologies and audit with that. So with that, thank you. I think I went fast for the last slides because of time, but I think I've been of great value to you guys. Thank you. Asi, back to you.
Raphael has a question.
Yes.
Is it about objective-centric auditing and risk management?
Yes. Yes.
That's the question.
That's the question. Is it object-centric or risk management? I will answer both. Auditing, you must be as objective as possible, and also approach the risk. Yes, you need to be objective. It has to be driven by the objective, but the objective is derived also from the risk assessment and the business itself and the risk assessment you've done. Yeah, so it's both to answer you.
Okay. He actually says it was an emphasis, not a question.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bonface, for sharing about system audits to the audience. We will record, as I indicated when we started, the session has been recorded, and we will share the slides as well to the ones who attended. That way you can have a backup just in case you need to review. And then next Tuesday, we will have a session. And it's going to be about how to respond to a cyber attack, a cybersecurity attack, of course, by Terry Masharia, who is also part of the audience today. So we will share the details as well, so that if you're interested, you can sign up for it. And then also we'll share feedback forms so that we can gather more insights on how beneficial this was. And apologies for the technical issues that we had on start. So thank you. Have a lovely evening. Thank you for tuning in till the end of the session, and apologies for extending the session again. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, Bonface, for presenting.